Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you are listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. On this episode, today's episode, tonight's episode, hey, who knows? I have Rob Keanalley. Now, Rob is all things tech and media and, most importantly, education thrown in there as well. Now, the metaverse. It's a thing that we all hear about. Rob is going to explain a whole bunch of stuff about it. Now, Rob has a business that he runs. He's going to explain it fully, but what he throws out there in education is salty sharks. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Can you explain what the metaverse is and where salty sharks come into play?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil, and thanks very much for inviting me on the show. I appreciate it. Okay, I'll start with what is the metaverse. And the good news is the metaverse is not new. The concept of virtual open world platforms and software has been around for 20, 25, 30 years. But most people know it in a games context. So, if you've ever played games like, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, all of those sort of games, they're open world. EverQuest is another one. They're open world environments that you go in and you play, and you'll see other people and so forth. That is essentially still what a metaverse is. It's just got a new fancy name, which often creates more confusion than it solves. So, whilst I also call it a metaverse, ultimately the technology is virtual worlds, and virtual worlds have been used, as I said, in gaming for a long time. But what we're now seeing educational tools and resources delivered in a virtual world environment, and that's where Salty Sharks comes in. So 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I started this company, and I started it with the purpose or mission of marine species conservation, specifically sharks. Sharks have been much maligned throughout modern times, which is a horrific injustice to the species because they're not the aggressive man-hunting killers that they're portrayed in literature and movies and so forth. Yes, they're apex predators. Yes, if there's an incident or an encounter with humans and sharks, it doesn't often go well for humans. But that's more a story about our vulnerabilities than it is about the shark being malicious. They're not malicious. They just they want to explore to see if something's food. They don't have hands. The only thing they've got is a mouth, and that mouth can hurt. So that's kind of where the shark sort of fits in. But what we've done over the last many, many decades is we've hunted these creatures to almost extinction. There's 75 species of shark that are critically endangered, and over 70% of sharks are threatened or worse. So, and when you think about it, that includes things like whale sharks, which are absolutely peaceful plankton and small fish-eating sharks, largest fish in the world, and an absolute wonder to behold. Sadly, we don't know as much about them as we do about many other species, but they're just amazing. But they're hunted for shark fin and so forth, and overfished and so forth. So the ultimate purpose was to change the narrative on sharks and protect other marine species as well. So we partnered with institutions like Fins Attached in the US, which is a research and conservation agency. And we raise funds for their research, shark tags, and various things. In fact, just last week, a satellite tag that we funded was deployed on a green sea turtle off Costa Rica, because there are other species that we're into protecting as well. So, we're doing some good in this space, which is important. But the key, and you'll know this as a teacher, the key to changing people's hearts and minds is education and also entertainment. So throughout history, we've conveyed information through storytelling. Obviously, before teaching became sort of the profession that it is today, a lot of it was information was shared with people through stories. And the more entertaining the story, the more it resonated with the audience. So we like to use both entertainment, storytelling, and education, as in more formal content sharing of education, together to change that narrative, to reframe the narrative of sharks from villains to heroes. And then obviously protect other species as well. So we started the company, and we funded the early development of the company through a crowdsourcing medium, which was NFTs. And we've been able to generate or build a community around the world of people who support what we do and believe in what we do, and have helped fund what we do. And now we've got a platform which is available globally, currently only in English speaking, but it will be available in other languages as we go. And that platform delivers educational content in a virtual world gamified way. And that's the Saltyverse, which is a combination of metaverse and our brand name, Salty Sharks. So at the moment, we have 3 education resources: whale sharks, sea turtles, and manta rays. And people can go into them. They're aquarium based. It's like visiting the aquarium, but doing it virtually. It's a safe environment, very secure. They go in via our website, and they can explore and learn about the different species with heaps of education content, curriculum agnostic. So it's designed to suit any curriculum anywhere in the world. It's like a virtual textbook, but it's information delivered in a way which is engaging, and which captures the students' attention, and wants to keep them coming back, and they keep wanting to learn, and then they reinforce it with games in the environments and so forth. So yeah.
There's so much in that. There's so much in
Yeah.
that. We're looking at conservation, sustainability, technology, environment, globalization. I'm struggling to put
Yeah.
together a number of coherent questions here,
That's all good.
because there's just so much more I want to know.
Yep.
But more like, I guess the first question is, and I ask this to all my guests for whatever sphere they're in. What's your why behind this? Why sharks? Why aquatic? Why the aquatic environment?
Okay, so as I mentioned prior, I grew up on the Gold Coast. I spent a lot of my time in the water, around the water, and I'm a qualified rescue diver. And so I've done a lot of diving with different species, and I've done diving with sharks as well. And I've always found through my interactions that they are a fantastic, inspirational, and mesmerizing species. You know, they are just amazing, and they've been around since before dinosaurs. You know, in their earliest form, which hasn't changed a great deal, they have just existed as an apex predator in the oceans, and it's a phenomenal achievement. Um, and so I've just always had this fascination with them. Marine conservation, again, is derived from my passion for sort of the ocean and diving, but it's also about leaving a better world for my children. I've got a 6 and 9-year-old, and there's no doubt in my mind that when the 9-year-old, my eldest, was born, my mindset changed. My entire outlook on life, it altered. You know, I became far more focused, less on me and more about on what sort of world am I leaving for my daughters. And that kind of presented a seismic shift in my thinking. You know, and I'd spent a lot of time in different managerial roles and business development roles of companies from small to international, but I'd probably always been focused on my career progression, and rather than giving back to the world. Um, Ocean conservation, marine conservation, is really important because somewhere around 50 to 70% of the world's oxygen supply comes from our oceans. So no matter where you live, ocean health is really important to us, because if that degrades and if that ratio drops, then we're all going to feel the impacts of that. Now, sharks, an apex predator, is critically important to the ocean ecosystem. You know, we need a healthy ecosystem. So, you know, it became an area that, one, I was passionate about as an individual from my youth, and two, it presents an opportunity to, I think, educate people on an area which they don't get a lot of education. I mean, when I grew up, there wasn't a lot of education around marine life and marine species. I mean, you could go into specific post-school fields and study it, but generally speaking, as general knowledge and awareness, it didn't seem to be covered a great deal. And I think that a lot of people lacked understanding about different marine species, and lacked understanding about just how impressive and magnificent some of these things are. Um, I don't know many people that realize that manta rays are one of the smartest fish in the ocean, on par with dolphins, and believed to possess self-recognition, which is just an incredible thing for a sea life, right? Um,
Yeah.
so, and I don't think many people realize and understand that. But I think if they do understand it, it creates a new appreciation and love for these species.
Well,
So,
I mean, that's the first I've heard that they're, that had that level of intelligence. I mean, you see a ray, flapping around
yeah,
the ocean, and you think, wow, that's pretty cool, and that's about it.
yeah, exactly. You don't realize just how smart they are. And then also don't realize that as much as you're watching them flap around the ocean, they're watching you swimming around the ocean, and they're more often than not going to come over and check you out and go, "Hey, you're interesting," and have a good look at you, and they do. So, there's so many wow moments about sea life. And now, look, I say this, and we're focused on marine species, but we're also focused on getting our education platform and the message across to as many people as we can. And I know that we can't be singularly focused on just marine life, if we want to get broader adoption of our platform. So we're in the process at the moment of adding a series on ancient history. So it's a history series on the wonders of the world, ancient wonders of the world, starting with the pyramids. That one will be available in a couple of weeks on the platform as well. And then we'll add a lot more to it. So it's going to be history, it's going to be social sciences, it's going to be geography, it's going to be marine species, it's going to be land species. So it's going to be a whole range of different things. But we've started obviously with our core focus, which is 3 different marine species. But there's plenty of areas in the curriculum which it could suit, in terms of biology studies, parts of the animal, and it does suit different ranges of ages as well. So it's still got a lot of great application, but it's not going to be our sole focus.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm a design teacher, so one of our key things we look at is sustainability. We look at sort of products, and how they can be more sustainable, but then we look at the waste of the products, and being in the aquatic environment, you would fully understand and comprehend the dangers of plastics, especially
Yeah.
that are in our waterways, the chemicals that are just flushed down into estuaries and various creeks. And I mean, I was born and raised in Sydney, and I remember you would never go anywhere near the Parramatta River, because these big companies, whether it was lack of education or just not caring, would just put all their waste into the Parramatta River, and it was years and years and years, and it's still probably not fully recovered. And then all you'd never go to certain beaches with certain winds, because you knew all the effluent that was just pumped out was
Would come
coming
straight
straight
back
back
around.
in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
And
we've done this a lot. We've mistreated our waterways and our oceans. We've considered them dumping grounds because we think it goes out to sea and then it either sinks or it goes away, and it doesn't. Obviously, we now know that it causes a lot of problems, both in the marine life, the fish stocks, and just the ocean environment in general. So we now know that it's a bad thing, but we've been doing it for hundreds of years, and it's about changing that mindset, and about looking after this resource, which if we don't look after it, it's really going to come back and bite us.
yeah, and you see that more and more. I mean, I grew up going to the beach. Every Christmas holidays we do a family holiday down to the south coast of New South Wales, and the beaches were pristine, some of the whitest sand in the world.
Right.
And you'd hear about sharks, and you'd hear about a whole range of things, but then you'd come back up into Sydney, into the metropolitan area, and the beaches, you wouldn't see sea life, you wouldn't see sharks, you wouldn't see octopus in the rock pools. um, but then I think it was probably early 90s, mid 90s, all of a sudden there was a big push for cleaning up the environment, especially the waterways. And then they cleaned it up, and you could see the difference in a
Mm.
matter of years.
Yeah.
um, but then unfortunately, you have clean water, the fish life comes back, and then the apex predators looking for the said fish life also come back in, and then there were more reported shark attacks. Now, we all know that you're more likely to die in a plane than get bitten by a shark. But the media seems to have this frenzy on when someone gets bitten by a shark. Generally, the person who is attacked, or not so much attacked, I guess, but investigated by the creature, is like, we're in their environment. It's not their fault. I was there.
Yeah, look, the media has a role in this, absolutely, and at the end of the day, the media and the modern culture around social media and stuff, it seems to prey upon outrage and fear, and all the negative emotions, because they're the ones that generate clicks and they generate interest, and people go, "Oh, it's salacious. I want to have a look at it." That's why you hear stories about shark attacks. It's odd that they talk about shark interactions as attacks. If someone's bitten by a snake or a spider, it's a bite. It's not a snake attack or a spider attack. It's a bite, right?
Yeah.
But it's no different for the shark. It's the vernacular that we use to describe interactions. We deliberately intensify to create more fear, more angst, more, because the whole concept of sharks creates a visceral sort of fear in people. They're like, it's a shark. They look terrible and scary, but most of them are not. They're thinking about one species most likely, and that's the great white shark. In many cases, there's so many other species. The lemon shark, for example, is like the dog of the ocean. It is phenomenal. It is so affectionate. They love pats. They will generally adopt a diver. So if they see a diver in the water, they go up and try to adopt them and get cuddles and pats and stuff and interact with them. And they'll even try and scare away other fish from that diver, because it's like that's their diver, they adopted. So lemon sharks are renowned for their affection, and it's not a widely known thing, but everyone likes to jump on the bandwagon and go, it's shark infested waters. Well, it's actually their habitat. It's a bit cruel to say it's shark infested waters. That's their habitat. So give them a break. We do more to protect crocs. And don't get me wrong, crocs are amazing creatures as well, but we do more to protect crocs than we do sharks. And crocs absolutely look at you as food. There is no question. Sharks don't. Humans aren't a shark's preferred food. We're not even close. Any interaction with a human, for the most part, 99% of the time, it's just mistaken identity. Or they're investigating to see if it is food and they discover it's not. Unfortunately, that discovery leads to problems for us. But they don't actually consider us food in any sense of the word. And that's, I think, they're deserving of respect and protection as much as a crocodile, which absolutely looks at you as food, and won't miss an opportunity. So, again, protect all of these species in the right way. Treat them with respect and care and so forth, and keep your distance. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you make a fantastic point there. Like, you hear of a croc coming out and taking a dog, or unfortunately, sometimes taking a person's life. But what they do is they capture the croc and they relocate it.
In many respects, they'll kill it. In many respects, they'll kill the croc for attacking a human. So because they want to stop that behaviour. So oftentimes they'll also want to recover remains. So they and this is very tragic, and it happened fairly recently up north. But they will kill the croc, which is again a bit sad for the croc, because it's just doing its natural thing. But in some cases they will relocate it, like you say. But yeah, unfortunately, more often than not, they'll kill it as well. So same with sharks.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of leading to. It's like, as soon as there's a shark bite, it's like all hands on deck. Let's capture this thing. Let's kill it. There's no, let's catch it and put it into another area of the ocean. It's just like, no, this thing's done. Yeah. And I guess in any environment, any ecosystem, it doesn't matter what you do. As soon as whether you take out the smallest part of that ecosystem or the top of it, it creates imbalance.
Yeah.
Uh, and is that part of what Salty Sharks aims to do, to create that? Okay, we need to look after the whole range from the krill to the the killer whale. You look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about all different marine species, but it's about generally all species in general. We're just focusing on sharks because it's like a core focus, but it's really all marine species. That's why our first three education resources, virtual world resources, are actually on different species like manta ray, as I mentioned, and sea turtles, and then the whale shark. It's not just about sharks; it's about a lot of other species as well, and it's about ones that people can really connect with. We've got one coming. Our research partner, Fins Attached, has actually sourced funding for us to build a virtual world on the great white shark, which one of their key focuses is on, and I'm more than happy to add that to the platform and build it for them. Now, the great white shark is interesting because you can't go to an aquarium and see a great white shark because they can't be kept in captivity. They die. They're just not able to be kept in captivity. So this gives people an opportunity to visit a virtual aquarium to see a great white shark and see more of it in its natural environment as well, in a safe way, and learn about the species as well, learn about all the different information and stats and so forth on the species. So it gives them an opportunity that they would not otherwise be able to get. So we're not about replacing aquariums. We're not about. I know some people say, "Oh, aquariums are bad," and I don't personally hold that view. I think aquariums serve a really good purpose, both in education and also rehabilitation as well, which a lot of them do. So I think they play an important role, but I know that not everybody can get to one. There's plenty of people in regional areas. I'm currently in Toowoomba, and for a school to take students to an aquarium would be very prohibitive, cost prohibitive, and time prohibitive, and they just wouldn't be able to do it. But what they can do is they can take them to the virtual aquarium, which gives students a more consistent experience than they would get even visiting an actual aquarium. But what it does is it then inspires them to go to an aquarium, with their family, perhaps at the holidays or whatever. It gives them that inspiration to go to the aquarium as well. And I think that enhances attendance at aquariums. When more and more people get to experience what it's like in the virtual, they'll want to go to to the real one as well. So it's about sort of working hand in hand with aquariums, not trying to replace them.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. You see something on TV, and if you've got the opportunity to go and actually see it in the physical world that we live in,
Yeah.
yeah, it brings so much more value. So with the virtual worlds that you are creating
Hmm.
now, is it platform based? Like, do we just look at the screen, or do we wear VR goggles, or how is it, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's a bit of a combination. So it's available web browser based is one version of how you access it. So you just simply go to our website, register, subscribe, and you go from there. It loads up in the web browser, so it's embedded, and you just enlarge the screen, and away you go. And then it plays like any other game. So you use your normal keyboard and mouse, wander around, explore it, and so forth. You can also experience it in VR with VR headset. There is slightly less interactivity in terms of some of the things you can click on with your mouse and open up and enlarge and so forth. You can't do in VR, but you can get very close and it's very immersive and you feel like you're there and it's amazing. So there's different sort of benefits from both. But not every school has access to VR headsets for students. So it's web browser based is a perfectly acceptable way to experience it and enjoy it and interact with it. But VR works as well. We also do in-school programs uh, where we teach students to build their own virtual worlds, and we get them to test what they create in VR at the end of the program, and they love it. Yeah, it's really quite engaging. So
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a mind meld for me in the sense of I know it's there, and I've got sort of a semi understanding of it. But again, when I went through school, we had a monochrome screen, and we had to everything was DOS prompt and command code and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And then even now, like I mean, I work in 3D environments and modeling and things like that. But then to move into some of my experience in the metaverse has been quite clunky and
Mm.
quite um, it's just like, why would I want to actually do this? Because I've got little characters that look like the Duplo men walking around and things like that. But it sounds like the environments that you're creating are much more, and some of the other ones that I've seen with another one of my I guess earlier on, the environments are improving. They are getting better, and they are getting more realistic and less gimmicky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the technology is improving steadily. It's not even at its most complete form. I think it's still got plenty of evolution to go still. But these days, you'll have customizable avatars to a degree that look very much like you or can look like you. You'll see 3D animated models of the animal in question or whatever swing around potentially or crawling around on the floor. So you'll have all that, and you'll have gamification elements, and you'll have environments that look and sound, because it's got look, it's got the visual, it's got sound, it's got all the different elements to it. So it's far more immersive than people are probably used to or realize what's available. It's certainly not Minecrafty, and it's not that sort of concept. It's far more graphically advanced, whilst also being able to be enjoyed on devices like an iPad, or an iPhone, as well as your browser, PC browser. So, it's got to be scalable in technology requirements as well as being as high fidelity as possible. So, yeah, it's come a long way.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you've got some relationship with other organisations, but you're also raising money through NFTs. Now,
That's how we funded it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
funded the development. Yeah,
yeah. So, I've heard about NFTs. The most well known one is that monkey, I believe.
Bored Ape. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bored Ape, and that's blown up. But I know that I went to an art gallery. I went to Hodder not too long ago, at one of the first, I guess, digital artworks. Andy Warhol actually made. He made this very pixelated banana, I think it was. But it's like you look at NFTs, and I guess the average person goes, "Well, it's just a digital image. Like, how is that of any value? How can that be bought and sold? How does it, make sense?" So, how do NFTs actually work?
Okay, so NFTs are, I mean, the longer version of the name is a non-fungible token, and that means essentially it's a unique token, a unique piece of art. So where cryptocurrency is a token that has a volume, Bitcoin is one token with a large volume behind it. These are individual tokens, and these can be bought, sold, owned digitally, and verified on the blockchain. Now, what that means is that it's verifiable ownership. So if you own a particular NFT, then it's verifiable that you own that, and it's an asset that you can hold and sell. Now, like any other asset, its value is in what utility it has. What's the purpose of having this particular asset? What does it do for you? Um, you know, I think that there's limited amount of value in a piece of NFT or art that just looks good. Yes, that's value, but it can't be the sole value behind it. Otherwise, it won't hold its value over time unless it's particularly fantastic, like Andy Warhol's banana, perhaps. But ultimately, that's an artist's name behind the value on that one.
Yeah,
So these NFTs, or the ones that we produced for our brand, are tied to the story. So behind it all is a story, an adventure story, if you will, around sharks being the heroes, very much akin to what you would have seen in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So these are sharks that are based on a similar concept, where these are heroes and they work with their mermaid allies, and they work to defeat the Atlanteans, who are the bad guys, who are polluting the oceans and destroying their natural habitat. So, and it's done in adventure stories. So it's an adventure story for younger audiences, and it's available on audiobook and written, and also we've got a couple of comics that are out now. And it basically engages the story of these characters to, go on adventures and save the world. And there's a lot of different sort of historical nuances throughout it all. So it's kind of a parallel universe, if you will, but it's got some, real Earth and real world historical references that go throughout it, which students will pick up on as they go. And these NFTs are characters that are in the story. So if you own an NFT from the collection, then you can own a character in the story, which over time has value if the story continues to develop and grow, and there's more comics and eventually an animation series and so on and so forth. So this gives the holders who are essentially have invested in our brand an opportunity to reap the rewards of that investment in the longer term. So, and there's also games that we are building where that NFT is a card in the game. It's a trading card game. They get to play with that NFT in that game. So, and they get to level it up and add value to that over time, which changes the NFT and makes it more valuable on the market. So, essentially, NFTs are really just assets. They're digital assets. They're, gone are the days where we might play, you might have grown up playing Magic the Gathering or any of those other trading card games. You never owned the cards behind them. They were always owned by the company that produced the game, Hasbro or whatever. Whereas if you are playing a game in our eventual trading card game when it's launched, you will own the card for that, and that becomes an asset you can buy and sell. So that's the sort of value add that exists with digital assets like NFTs. Sadly, however, the crypto market and so forth is what it is, and it's there's a lot of negativity, justly so, around crypto and NFTs. And people need to be very careful of what they invest in and be very careful about what they get involved in because of the scams that are out there. And so, do your own research, do your own due diligence, make sure that you know what you're getting involved in that space. And I've done many coaching sessions for people who weren't crypto natives and didn't know much about it, trying to educate them on safe ways to dabble in the market and to get into the market safely. So I'm familiar with that concept.
Yeah, because that whole sphere of cryptocurrency and blockchain and it's, you hear of, cowboys and people getting scammed and people stealing
Yep.
your Bitcoin or your cryptocurrency, and then all of a sudden it spikes to tremendous amounts and then crashes almost instantly. So people are buying and selling this stuff, and I still kick myself because I was, when Bitcoin was first started populating the internet, it was cheap as chips, and I thought, well, I'm not investing into that. I'm not spending money on that. That's got to be a rort, you know. But
Well, in many respects, though, your initial reaction was right, because
mm,
90% or more of them are exactly that. Now, yes, there are some. Bitcoin has turned into one of the tier one safe havens. Great thing, but it still fluctuates wildly in volume and price. So you've still got to be very careful of getting involved in it. Make sure you know what you're getting involved in. Is always the answer. But also never invest more than you're willing to lose.
yeah,
Because often they go to zero, but then that's no different to penny any stocks on the market as well. Stocks on the stock market are very similar. There's just not quite as much volatility, but otherwise there's a lot of similarities. The difference being with crypto is it's unregulated. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's the strength of it, and I would probably disagree. I think the strength of it is decentralization. A weakness to it is not being regulated. I think that regulation would add a lot of safety nets and would take away a lot of the crime and scams and so forth, which I think are hurting the industry, not helping it. So that's just my perspective on it. But yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I just read an article probably maybe a week or two ago of a young, like a teenager, very very tech savvy who created a crypto,
Hmm.
traded, and look, to be honest, I have no idea how it actually worked, but he got it trading. He made I think it was $14 million in the space of a number of hours. But it was just, in the old Wall Street sort of vernacular, as a pump and dump. So
Yep.
he just got it, and then all of a sudden he just. I mean, I think part of the story was all those other traders, all the other crypto traders who saw what he was doing, exacted their their revenge on him because he was giving them such a bad name. And but
Yeah.
was this is this young man, was he capitalizing on the fact that it's not regulated, the fact that you can there's I guess there's no safety net for anyone, and he's like, well, I've got a chance to make a lot of money, so why not?
Yeah, and look, that's exactly what he did. Lack of regulations, low barriers to entry, and relative ease now of creating templated tokens of what he's obviously did, and getting them out there. But the key really is he preyed upon everyone else's greed, because he wouldn't be able to make the kind of money he made if it wasn't for people buying the token with the effectively the prospect of trying to turn a quick flip to turn it, $10 into $100 and so forth, right? People who make money doing what this little kid did are effectively playing upon the greed of investors, the greed of people out there who are like, I just want to make some quick bucks. And so they're willing to try and do what he did, or invest quickly and buy and then sell quickly and make some money as it spikes in price. And in any normal circumstance, in a regulated environment, you could probably get away with that to a degree, although it won't spike as much. But what these people are doing with the tokens they're creating is they store X amount for themselves, them and their team, and then they use bots to sell portions of it constantly as soon as there are buys. So as the price goes up and the trading volume goes up, it's going up because people are buying, thinking that they're going to get in and get out at a higher point and make money. But every time they're buying in, he's selling, and he's crystallizing his profit, and they're losing out every single time because the supply is dropping. You see, so it's not working for them the way they think, because it's an unregulated system, and he's able to do, unscrupulous actions and lie to his investors, etc., about what he's doing and what his intentions are, and what the purpose is, and he's able to get away with it because it's not regulated. So no one's going to be able to hold him to account unless they're very savvy and can hold him to account within the market. So that's kind of how
Yeah.
that works, sadly. And I would always say to people, don't be greedy. Stay away from that stuff. Like, it's not worth it. You will lose money.
Yeah. So is this style of trading, and with your, so also I guess venture capital, with NFTs and blockchain, is this a way companies like yourself are looking, because that's a future where I can make money, and I can make it safely, and people get something in return, but I I do need to be careful, like, because there's a lot
You
of
do.
people that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do these investors go about going, well, how do I make money from salty sharks? How is an educational environment beneficial?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways in which they can get value, and it's about not necessarily monetary value. A lot of it is value in terms of other aspects or other returns. So, as an NFT holder, so we used it as like a crowdfunding source. So instead of people using GoFundMe or putting out an IPO or doing other methods of funding, we decided to go to a community, a global community, who were passionate about the same causes and interests we were, and say to them very transparently, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to build. We want to build an education and entertainment brand focused on marine species conservation, and get it out there to the world and re-educate the world. So, and they were like, well, okay, well, they believed in what we're doing. They believed our long-term goals and visions, and they were willing to buy the NFT and own the NFT to help fund us do that. Now, that NFT that they own also gives them lifetime perpetual access to all the environments we build. So for them and their family and their kids, they can visit these virtual worlds for free as much as they want because they own the NFT. So they don't need to be a subscriber to visit the paid world. So there's a value associated with that as well. So they're
And
getting that value for their NFT that they hold. We also have a rewards program whereby we share, obviously, 10% of the proceeds, sorry, 10% of the profits from our education platform goes to our conservation partner, Fins Attached, because we're all about funding research and conservation activities. So that goes to them. And then 20% gets distributed through a rewards program to the holders of the NFTs as well. So over time, they're getting these rewards for holding their NFT as well as perpetual access to these virtual world exhibits. So there's great value in it for them. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Now, does like I guess like a lot of investment, there's a window. So, is your educational group, is Salty Sharks open to new investors? Let's say someone's listening and they go, "Hey, I've got a passion for this. I've got a passion for education. I've got a passion for the environment. How can I get on board with this?" Are the doors always open, or is there a window?
Yeah. A little bit of both, to be honest. The NFT collection is sold out, and so it's no longer available. And we're not, we're about doing things ethically and morally transparent. So we're not launching any other collections to try and milk the community and try and get more money in. That's not what we're about. We've developed the product and we're continuing to develop the product, but it's already being distributed into schools. So that the revenue stream for the company is that distribution to schools now. Homeschool families have one pathway and access to resources. Schools have a separate one just for schools, as well as after school care, education providers, and so forth. So and families. So our revenue streams are now coming from that platform through subscription and so forth. We are still open to traditional investment now, which is potentially share sales of shares in the company, but we're not raising funds through NFTs any further at this point. That's now finished and closed. The NFTs are available on secondary markets and legitimate secondary markets as people buy and sell like any other assets. So people can buy them on secondary markets, and the benefits that I've spoken about are attributed to the holder, whoever holds it currently. So if you buy one off the secondary, you get the value and benefits of it. So plenty of that can still happen for people, but yeah, there's no more of the original NFTs for sale as a mint.
Oh, yeah, it's
Hmm.
really like it's really interesting to me because it's a whole new world for me. I'm very I guess I'm showing my age as well. It's I'm very you know traditional in the sense of you have your stuff in your shares if you want to take that risk, or you have you manage your superannuation, or you buy property,
Yeah.
and so you have these physical assets that can be seen, that can be touched. I mean, superannuation and money in the bank. Yeah, it's lost that to a certain extent. It's lost that cash feel, but um,
Well,
it,
often
it's
stocks are the same. You can't feel a stock. Yes, you get a share certificate, generally digital,
yeah,
but you don't often get you can't touch and feel your stocks in BHP or ANZ Bank or any of those type ones. But yeah, it's a similar concept to that in many respects. It's just a very volatile class of asset, and you just have to be very, very wary and very careful before you invest in it. Do a lot of research. Um, Invest small amounts. Just take it easy. Don't go crazy. The biggest risk to any investor is greed.
yeah.
If you can get a handle and stifle that emotion, then you'll do well in investment because you're not subjected to that that manipulation, which they are masters of, which I try and get people to stay clear of. But it's worth noting, if you don't mind, it's also worth
No,
noting that
absolutely.
our education platform has got absolutely nothing to do with crypto or NFTs. The education platform is standalone. It is it is completely separate. So children in visiting the education platform have no exposure to anything to do with crypto or NFTs. It is purely about education on the species or education on the topic at hand. We've been assessed by Safer Technology for Schools, and we've been given the what's it called? What do they call it? We're certified,
Accreditation.
or
So, yeah.
accreditation. We're certified. Yeah, so we're certified. They've gone through and done all their checks. It was a very comprehensive process with them. So that's important for us because it means that, especially in Australia and New Zealand, every Department of Education, every independent school network, every Catholic school network, all of them subscribe to this platform through Education Services Australia. And we are very proud to hand on heart say we are done. We check all the boxes, and you can use our product safely and our platform safely in schools. So.
Yeah, well, you beat me to the punch on
Oh,
on
sorry.
saying that. I was about to go. Well, you're doing all this sort of stuff, and you're in the digital world, and there's gamification, and I guess in a way but you've captured it well, and everything that you've talked about, everything is about being ethically safe, being morally right, being being completely transparent in what you're doing. But I'm sure and it's good that we have these accreditation services, especially when we're dealing with the lives of young people.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are people who go, well, I've got a new target audience. I've got someone who's going to lift mum's credit card and, do this and put people in quite a bind. So, um, yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned that you also have done a bit of training on people
Mm.
with investing. So I was just like, well, does it touch on schools, or is it just no, we're 100% sustainable environmental, we're looking at all these environments to better our world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not my sole purpose, really. I mean, as much as I am interested in and I have been involved in crypto and NFTs, my purpose is conservation. My purpose is sustainable environment and education and entertainment. Like I've written and published stories of my own books. I've got a fantasy book that I published years ago. And I'm an avid writer. I love telling great stories and entertaining people. But it is about education. That's the core focus of what we're doing. So, this platform and everything around it is designed to re-engage students who may have lost that sort of love and passion for learning, who may need to learn through different mediums. The traditional textbooks aren't doing it for them, and this gives them an opportunity to re-engage and get passionate about a topic. As passionate as I am about the topic would be great, but it doesn't have to be that. Doesn't have to be that passionate, but it needs to be getting up there. So that's my sole focus. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. And look, it's a thing to be passionate about. I mean, we live, on the east coast of Australia. That's where the vast majority of Australians live. They want to live by the water. They want to they want to have the ocean view. So I think it's critically important that we are, as people, as societies, educated about our impacts on the environment and the impact that actually has on us. Because some people are just like, yeah, whatever, I'll just throw my chip packet out. It doesn't bother me none. But
Mm.
if you say to them, yeah, every chip packet that you throw out, every plastic, every 6-pack plastic wrap that you just you don't care about at the park,
Yeah.
this is what it leads to. And I think part of that, sometimes, people need that. Well, you know what? Your behavior will actually affect you in this way or affect
Mm.
your children in this way. And then, I guess, that the sole focus is education.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and obviously, as you just touched on, there are consequences for everything we do. We may not see those consequences directly ourselves. They may be consequences borne by our children or our children's children, but they are going to be consequences, and we want the consequences to be good ones.
Yeah.
So, yes, everything will lead to a consequence, absolutely, but we just want it to be the right outcome, the right consequence. So, rubbish thrown in the bin rather than just on the ground means that it won't end up in a sea turtle's belly or mouth, and because they thought it was a jellyfish, and it won't end up killing that particular sea turtle, which of the 7 remaining species, most of them are endangered. So, you know, little things like that make a big difference down the track. So if we can get people to think about that in terms of what those consequences are, that's a huge win. And if we can do it in a way which captures their heart, because ultimately also people protect what they're passionate about. So if we can create a sense of connection to the heart to these marine species, then they'll want to look after and protect them. If you go to a beach and you watch a sea turtle laying her eggs, it's going to touch you. 99% of people are going to be emotionally moved by that. And those people are then going to want to protect them. I took my daughter to Mon Repos up near Bundaberg to watch the sea turtles laying their eggs, the loggerheads. And it changed. You could see the change in her as an 8-year-old then, she came away wanting to be a park ranger. Like that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to be a park ranger. That may not happen, but what it did was it created a passion for her, and she went away on her own and learnt more about them. So she started learning about the different sea turtle species. She started learning about what they do and how they interact, and she was an inspiration for some of this as well. So I don't think sea turtles would have been one of our first 3 if it wasn't for her. And also the conservation agency, of which they're very passionate about it. So we just had a green sea turtle satellite tag we funded, applied to a green sea turtle in Costa Rica, and they're now tracking her movements to try and better understand migration patterns and so forth. So, we're having a real world impact, which is important, and we can't do that without people getting involved in our education platform.
Yeah, so it's just it seems like for people who have no idea about Australian geography, where Toowoomba is, you're up on the Great Dividing Range, well away from the ocean.
Yeah.
Even though you're born and raised on the coast,
Mm.
you're running a business for marine conservation, and you've got a turtle that you're tracking in Costa Rica. You're partnered with a US based company. So you truly are a global. You are truly having a global impact. And the reason I bring that up is, you've partnered with a company in the US. Were there not any companies in Australia that were able to do that, or were aligned with the same values, or
No,
was
there
it just
were.
that opportunity?
Yeah, no, there were absolutely, but there wasn't the opportunity that came about with Fins Attached, and also, you go back like 2.5 years now. We've been partnered with them for a long time, and back then, when you speak to, and I'm going to be brutally honest here, when you speak to research agencies, conservation agencies, and you say, hey, we're this company, we're doing this, we're raising funds, blah blah blah. And obviously, we're very transparent about how we've developed and raised funds for our development. They didn't want anything to do with a company involved in NFTs and crypto. So, there was that. We had many knockbacks from conservation agencies and so forth who just didn't want anything to do with us. And I was like, that's fair enough. Like, I get it. I understand the negativity in the market. I totally understand where you're coming from, and no judgment from me. But obviously, we had to find a conservation agency that was met our requirements in terms of focus on the species that we're passionate about, but also was comfortable working with a company that did things a bit differently. And Fins Attached was very much like that. So developed a very great relationship with Alex Antonio, who is their founder. He's just an incredible guy, and he's so passionate about what he does. And yeah, just love working with him. And you talk about global reach. One of our first schools onboarded for our platform is in the UK. and it's just absolutely phenomenal. I have we've actually just published on our YouTube channel a testimonial from that school, and the kids absolutely love it. So, we've got this real impact and this real sort of um, group of children in the United Kingdom that love everything about this Australian brand and what we're doing, and they love our platform. So, it's just going from strength to strength, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I guess that's credit to your passion and I'm assuming your team's passion as well,
Yes.
because this doesn't sound like a venture that could be done on your own.
Oh, no, not at all. I've got an amazing team of people that are also based all around the world. We have a German developer. We have a team of people who are coders in Unity, which build our virtual worlds are built in Unity. And we have a team of people that build those, and they're based in Pakistan. We have our community manager based out of Scotland. And we have people in the US, obviously, and one of my partners is in Perth. So, we've got quite a large team of people, and they're all geographically dispersed around the world, which is just phenomenal. We have affiliates in 9 countries now. I was going to say the UK, US, Canada, Singapore, Netherlands, Australia. I feel like I've forgotten somewhere, but yeah. So we've got affiliates in these other countries as well. So and they're helping to drive the awareness of the platform. So
Yeah, and I guess as you mentioned earlier, currently it's just an English speaking platform, but you are branching into two other languages, and I think that's so important because you think of how many nations, island nations there are, that have no, they just don't have the resources, um, to get the knowledge that they need that would drastically help their environment as well. So
yeah, 100%. In fact, there are some countries where this platform is available totally for free, simply because of the fact that their education systems don't have the resources to even though it's extremely affordable, like it's dirt cheap. It's 50 cents a student per annum, like it's crazy cheap. Um, but a lot of the countries that just simply don't have those resources can actually access it for free. And in areas, regional and remote areas, where schools are smaller, populations are smaller, and students, they can actually register as a cluster. So they can share a registration amongst, a number of schools to get that same ratio of cost per student down really low, because it's not about making, it's not about making truckloads of money. It's about getting education out there in front of people and making it available. So that's some of the key features of what we're doing is that its accessibility has to be there. So
yeah, and to hear that cost per student, like that's, I've been in education, 20 plus years now, and ed tech companies don't do that.
yeah, yeah,
They
I
they
know.
just they just don't. There are very few. The only ones that I can think of that give stuff away for free are the ones that have phenomenal charges to private business.
Yeah.
But the general ed tech company don't they don't do what you're doing. So it just shows that your the drive behind everything is for the greater good,
Mm.
for the generations to come.
Some of the places that need the education the most are often the ones that can afford it the least. It just makes sense that you've got to find ways to support them in accessing that education. So absolutely, we're aware of the challenges. It's I went to the National Education Summit in Brisbane earlier this year, exhibited that, and there were teachers coming up to me going, "This is absolutely fantastic. How do I get this? How can I get this in the school?" And talk to them about it. And this was before we had safer technology for schools, tech, etc. But and that's obviously a barrier to Australian school entry, which is now overcome. But told them the price of it, and they were like, well, "Why is it so cheap?" And I'm like, "Well, because it doesn't need to be expensive. Like it's available. It's been developed to make it available at a price which is affordable." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, it's really cheap." I'm like, yes, thank you, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still a good product and it's still viable and it's incredibly adaptable. So even to the point where schools can actually upload, not directly, they can send content to us, which we can upload to the environment to suit their particular lesson plan in a particular term. So I don't know many edtech companies that offer that sort of customization, but as long as it's content that's specific to the environment, we will upload it for them and make it available so their students can see content that they've helped develop, or that they're learning in the classroom. It's available for every student who visits it, but it's pretty phenomenal. And just lastly, we're also building virtual worlds. So we've got next year in term 2, we're building an Australian platypus virtual world environment with a school so that their students are designing it. Their students are designing the mini games for it. Their students are voicing the NPCs that other students will hear information from in the environment. So it'll be co-built with a school, which again is just a phenomenal thing that again doesn't happen anywhere else. So
No, that doesn't happen in edtech.
mm.
I mean, you're just breaking barriers sort of everywhere at the moment. So which is it's refreshing to hear that this is happening. And another thing that you said earlier in regards to the accessibility is that you provide it to homeschooled children as well. And again, that's another thing that most companies don't do because they're going, well, yeah, that's like one student there and two students in that family, and there's not the cost benefit for them. Where again, you're about let's get the education out there.
It wasn't that hard, and let's be honest. I mean, I'm not about blowing sunshine up our own backsides, but it wasn't that hard to create multiple versions of a virtual world that is accessible by different audiences. So schools and school students access one particular version. Homeschool families and families access a separate one. So they don't cross over. But it's not difficult to do. It's just hosting costs effectively in terms of the two different worlds. So it's not hard to do. Why wouldn't you do it? And there's a large number of homeschool families. Homeschooling since COVID in particular has skyrocketed. So making it available to those people, it just made sense. And we were when we exhibited at the World Science Festivals in Toowoomba, Ipswich, and Chinchilla this year, we had some incredible reactions from homeschool students who came along and experienced it. They put the VR headset on, they went and explored it, and there was some really heartbreaking moments there where the reactions from those students were so intense that in one particular case, the mother burst into tears because of the reaction her child had to experiencing this virtual world. So, that, if nothing else, makes everything worthwhile.
Yeah, it's you have from my perspective, and I'm sure probably a number of other educators listening, you have the heart of a true educator because you want to impact that child. Now, whatever child that is, you want to impact that one and make a change in their lives. Now, I have the opportunity to have 15 to 25 students in any one classroom at any one time. And so my opportunities are there constantly, but you're not you're not a traditional educator, but what you're doing for education is going to be phenomenal. And it's just you're creating a good product, you're creating accessibility, you're creating equity to every student. Whether they, I guess from the top tier schools who have the resources to get a class set of VR goggles,
Sure.
to the student who's out on regional Australia on a farm, who's never going to see the ocean until they're much, much older,
Yep.
just on their laptop. So yeah, I just, yeah, it's hard to put into words. I guess the gratitude that I'm feeling for what you're doing for education.
Oh, thank you. That actually means a lot. And yeah, you're right. I've never been a teacher, and my access or my involvement in education has always been sort of at a corporate level. Teaching people in a corporate environment how to do different things. So um, I suppose I've always dabbled in peripheral education areas. Like when I first started out in my career, I was in the federal police, and I was a firearms instructor. So I kind of have always gravitated towards teaching people something as best I could, and this gives me an opportunity to reach people literally on a global scale in a way that just blows me away, and yet we built it. So it really is quite touching, and I appreciate the kind words. So.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Now, look, it is getting on, and
Yeah,
I appreciate your time tremendously, especially at this time of year.
no problem.
It's getting on, and it's getting to the silly season as such, and but I truly appreciate your time. But just before we go, I've just got a couple more questions just to finish off.
Go for it.
First one is: do you have a challenge for the audience?
A challenge.
A challenge to
Ooh.
put out there, whatever it may be, hard or small.
Oh, look. I think that the biggest challenge I think that we all need to tackle is how are we going to make a difference? How can we, as individuals, make a difference? And it can be small or it can be large. Um, if you take some time over this holiday that's coming up and plant a tree or clean up a beach or volunteer for an activity where it involves conservation or environmental sustainability. Do even just something small. Clean up their local park. There are little things we can do that make a big difference to every other species on the planet. And it doesn't have to be a marine species. I'm not saying go save a shark, but if you can save a shark, please do. But also, take an opportunity to just do the small things. And those things make a huge difference as well. So that would be a challenge I'd love to throw out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the 1%ers. I mean, you hear about that in professional sport. Do the 1% right, and
Yeah.
yeah, you make those incremental changes, and it has a net return. So
I wish Tottenham Hotspur would do that with some of their games, but anyway, that's another story. So,
yeah, well, I mean, going from English Premier League to rugby league, I follow the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, so I wish they'd do something right. So
we can relate, definitely. Yeah.
the second question I have for you: do you have like a mantra, a quote, just something that has stuck with you that you maybe rely on or hold fast to?
There's probably a few that I've sort of touched on over time. I suppose one that kind of resonates to me is, and I don't know, I'm going to butcher it, but I'll try and get the comment, the theme across. It's do things do things when no one's watching that you would do if you had an audience. So, I think I butchered it, but if you get that thought across, it's that what we do when no one's watching resonates as much as what we do when we have an audience. So, and that's
Yeah,
something that I kind of focus on a lot. Especially in the market I've been in over the last 3 years. People have said to me, "Oh, if you did this or you did this, you could make millions of dollars," and I'm like, "Yes, but that's not ethical and it's not who we are." So, I want to act in a way that my children will be proud of me into the future, and I won't have to hide or do anything to obfuscate who I am and what I do. So, yeah, if we act in that way all the time, I think we've got it nailed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I guess, and that's it's all about integrity.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and in some spheres, it's it's very very much missing. So yeah, definitely, I agree with that one. Now, it wouldn't be the Tattooed Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
Oh, I'm so sorry to say I do not. I actually wondered. I did wonder if that was going to be a question. And I thought about this earlier. I'm like, I wonder if you're going to ask me that. But yeah, I've gone through my entire life and I've never gotten a tattoo, which I think is probably more in the minority now than anything else. So, and the reason for it is I've never found just that perfect image that I want to have permanently attached to my body. Um, Call me crazy, but I haven't.
No, look, I 100% get that. They are, well, once they're on, they don't come off easily.
Correct. And honestly, I think if anything, I should probably have a shark one, but I don't.
Why?
So
Now, this question this one's just for you.
okay,
Shark Week. Shark Week. What do you think of it?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. I think anything that we can do to raise awareness around sharks and shark conservation, I think is a good thing. Now, do they sensationalize the crap out of it, and do they do things that I would go I cringe at? Yeah, absolutely they do. But in the same vein that no publicity is bad publicity, I think that Shark Week has a net good effect overall. And so I'm a fan. I wasn't a fan of their last host necessarily, but I'm a fan of the concept, and they've had some really good episodes. And I've learned stuff from them as well. So there are some, because if you watch all of the there's a ton of episodes, and
Yeah.
they're all throughout the week. But there's ones that kind of don't reach the heights of publicity that others do. That I would say you can go back and watch them, and you will learn a ton about sharks. So highly worthwhile. It's educational for the most part, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, and last but certainly not least, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, about your companies, even about NFT and crypto, about some of the training that you may do,
Yep.
where's the best place to find you? And I'll put these in the show notes as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Go to our website. So www.saltysharks.io, IO for Internet Organization. So saltysharks.io. From there, you'll find links to our Saltyverse, which is where you can register and subscribe to the platform. It's easy, straightforward. You can also message us. You can send us a message, ask questions. We'll answer those. You can email me as well directly, and I'm happy to talk to teachers about, obviously Southeast Queensland based, around some of the in-school programs we can do. Happy to talk about that and discuss that with them as well. But obviously, from the global audience that you have, it's just the education platform. So
Fantastic. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time tonight. I have learnt a tremendous amount. I've been inspired with your passion for nature, for sustainability, and I guess for my heart, education especially. Um, I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm sure there's a myriad of other teachers and, more importantly, students who appreciate what you and the Salty Sharks team are doing.
thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. So it's amazing.
Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening, and have a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year.
Same to you as well. Look forward to talking soon.
Thanks, Rob.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattooed Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.